Throughout history, migration has left lasting imprints across South Asia, reshaping lives, communities, borders, and the course of entire nations. Today in India, nearly 1 in every 3 people is a migrant. And for many, leaving home wasn't a choice, it was the only way to survive. Migration will continue to be a powerful force for human survival, adaptation, and economic change. But the real question is, are we as a nation prepared to face the challenges it brings? Through my experience of ground reporting, I have seen how migration is reshaping India's rural and urban landscape. Every year, people affected by conflict, climate disasters, economic hardships, and developmental injustice are forced to leave behind everything they know in search of safety, dignity, and livelihood. Hello, my name is Jyoti Jangra, and I'm one of the producers behind Newsreel Asia's Mapping India project. This project aims to cover every state in the country, and over the past 4 years, we have reported from 18 states across northern, eastern, central, and western India. My first experience was in the North Indian state of Uttarakhand, where a collapsing economy has triggered a mass exodus, transforming once lively villages into ghost settlements.
एक पूरी जिंदगी उधर छोड़ के आए, बोल रहा हूँ दिमाग इधर है, पूरा मन उधर है.
Most of the vibrant youth from these districts have left for the plains, leaving behind a void that is now filled primarily by the elderly.
हाँ, यहाँ तो चिड़ियाघर बन गया भरतपुर में। पहले ऐसे रौनक थी ना।
It was during my journey just a few kilometers away from Kuldeep's home that I encountered an elderly couple in Bharatpur village. They stood as the final remnants of their village, a poignant reminder of the impact of mass migration.
गांव वाले कोई नहीं आएगा तो अकेला आदमी रहेगा नहीं क्या यहाँ?
कितना बड़ा मकान। अरे तो अभी गए 2-3 साल गए इनको देखा तो मैं बना रखा इनका मैंने कहा।
अब जिसका कहीं जाने का साधन ना हो तो वो क्या करेगा?
अच्छा होता था पहले तो, अब तो टाइम पास ही नहीं हो रहा बस।
हम आपको छोड़ के नहीं जा रहे, हम आएंगे।
Along India's eastern coast, I then traveled to Odisha, a state constantly battered by natural disasters. I documented the struggle of fishing and farming communities who have not just lost their land and livelihood to disasters, but also their sense of stability and future.
वेस्ट बंगाल में हर साल 2-3 साइक्लोन आता है, छोटा बड़ा मिलके। और जब तूफान आया तो 99 का हमें लगा हमारा गांव तो कुछ बचेगा, अभी तो हमारा गांव होगा ही नहीं। मतलब एक गांव का ऊपर पूरा मिट्टी हो गया, तो गांव ही नहीं। और बहुत तो गांव है, बहुत तो जगह है ऐसा जो समुद्र में डूबने वाला है, और वो लोग बहुत कुछ झेलने वाले हैं। तो हमारा जो गांव था वो 300-400 साल पहले हमारा वो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी नहीं था, कोई फैक्ट्री नहीं, लेकिन सफ़र हम लोग किया। और जो लोग पहले इंडस्ट्री बनाए वो लोग भी बताते हमको सिखा रहे आप एक पेड़ लगा, हम लोग जंगल बनाए, हमको पेड़ लगाने के बाद हम लोग तो जंगल बनाए फिर भी हम लोग रिहैबिलिटेट हुआ।
These recurring climate shocks have trapped communities in a vicious cycle of poverty and distress migration. In 2004 alone, more than 5.4 million people were displaced by floods, storms, and other climate-related disasters. Now, let's talk about conflict, which, just like climate, leaves no option but to run for safety overnight. In the northeast, I then reported from Manipur, a state gripped by violence that continues to cast a long shadow over its future. Since the violence broke out in Manipur on May 3, 2023, over 200 people have been killed, 60,000 displaced, and nearly 5,000 houses burned. The state alone accounted for 97% of all conflict-related displacements in South Asia in 2023. In the Himalayan region, I investigated the displacement caused by large-scale development projects. From hydroelectric power plants to highways and dams, these projects promise progress, but for many, they cost their home and their livelihood. The Pong Dam, built in 1975 on the Beas River in Himachal Pradesh, displaced over 20,000 families, with many still awaiting rehabilitation. I met families who were uprooted nearly 60 years ago, and they still continue to live on a small piece of land in the Pong Dam reservoir simply because they have nowhere else to go.
हमारे जो मकान था, पानी आने की वजह से वहाँ से शिफ्ट करना पड़ा, और एट द स्पॉट जहाँ हम रह रहे हैं उस टाइम हमने जहाँ पर कुल्ली बनाई, झोंपड़ी, जो ज़मीनों के पैसे मिले 200-250-300 रुपये बताते थे हमारे पिताजी, ठीक है जी, उनसे ना तो ज़मीन खरीदी जा सकती थी ना मकान बनाए जा सकते थे। तब हम तो मजबूरी कारण ही जहाँ रह रहे हैं, आज भी उसी मजबूरी कारण हम जहाँ रह रहे हैं।
Since 1945, development projects in India have displaced between 21 million to 50 million people. Yet, nearly 75% of them are still awaiting rehabilitation. These numbers alone tell a very powerful story. But why am I telling you all this? Why should it matter to you or to me if any person in any part of the country is forced to leave their home? Because it doesn't just affect them, but also affects us.
In one word, if I have to say, externality is the effect. Because of that, I must be concerned. Because you do one thing, your act is going to affect me. Suppose you have an infectious disease. Can I be protected? Am I isolated from that? No, I am vulnerable, I am exposed. Though everything hangs together. One cannot just stand by oneself in isolation.
Involuntary migration creates serious social, economic, and governance challenges. It puts pressure on our cities and deprives our villages. In simple words, it changes the way our country lives, works, and grows. Let's start with the economic side of it. A lot of migrants in India end up working in the informal sector as daily wage workers or part of the gig economy. Most of them do not have any legal protections, job security, or even the basic dignity at workplace.
Your pay is daily wage. It is not a guaranteed pay that you will get. Then there are no perks. You don't get benefits of health services or education services or even housing, and these other perks are vanished because you are a daily wage worker. And there's no question of a pension, that what happens to the elderly people in your family. Are they getting pension? No. So that source dried up. And that's why casualization takes place, thereby temporization takes place, and then there are no social security benefits. So that is the biggest threat to the existence of these displaced people. What is there tomorrow, for tomorrow?
Back home, the villages they leave behind also begin to suffer economically. Local economies weaken, families become dependent on remittance, and valuable skill sets are lost. Over time, this creates a cycle of dependency and widens economic inequality. That's how brain drain begins, not just from one village, but from entire regions.
ये पूरा संजय नगर बोला जाता है इसको। संजय नगर, बंजार चाल। शुरू में हम लोग आए थे तो इधर ही रहते थे, हम लोग आगे रहते थे।
Migrants, especially those from marginalized backgrounds, may face discrimination, exclusion, and stigma, leading to social fragmentation or ghettoization.
It leads to some kind of distortion in society of the kind jealousy, envy. We don't even talk about these elements, all these crimes that are taking place. It's a distortion of the mind, of the psychology that's creating this.
The impact on governance is far more serious. As more and more people migrate to cities, urban infrastructure struggles to keep up. Resources are stretched, housing becomes unaffordable, pollution rises, and unplanned settlements grow. What we're witnessing is a silent crisis. Cities continue to absorb a wave of migrants, people who build our homes, clean our cities, drive our vehicles, and deliver our essentials. Yet, despite being vital to the urban economy, they often live without stable housing, access to healthcare, or job security.
यहाँ गंदगी की वजह से होता मैम, गंदगी रहती है, सांस फूलती है, फसली में दर्द, कलेजे में दर्द। इधर कोई आता ही नहीं साफ सफाई करने, गटर भर जा रहा तो नहीं आ रहे साफ करने कोई। और वहाँ सब होता है जहाँ मैं काम पे जाती हूँ, वहाँ एकदम साफ सफाई रहता है उधर। और वो लोग बोलते भी तुम लोग साफ सफाई वाले है ही नहीं हो। वो जहाँ काम करती ना, मैं बोली क्या खाला तुम लोग ऐसा बोलते हो, साफ सफाई वाले नहीं है। बिकॉज साफ सफाई के हम लोग साफ सफाई करते।
India is also inadequately equipped with administrative infrastructure needed to manage this scale of mobility. You may see that even the most basic right to vote becomes inaccessible as people move. Despite the scale of this crisis, India lacks a unified legal framework or institutional mechanism to protect those who are displaced or forcefully migrated. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the full extent of this crisis. With no safety net in place, thousands of migrant workers were left to walk hundreds of kilometers back to their village, unseen, unheard, and unsupported.
So since we don't have a national level recognition and national level action plan for IDPs, then if you're asking or even making a statement that people are fleeing in big numbers might be misleading, right? Because we don't know what number, where, and how. We do have IDMC sort of giving us a tracker of number of IDPs in the country, and always it keeps on growing. But the thing is that at the end of the day, IDMC is a monitoring agency based in Geneva, right? We need to also have our own records for the same, which can be more tested and verified. So I do think so that the first challenge itself is counting, or I'm not saying count each person, but also understanding how large scale is this problem even. And I think the second thing also is in terms of portability of welfare schemes, right? When it comes to, because we started this discussion with voluntary and involuntary migrants, right? So voluntary migrants who are going outside for work, to this day, even they are struggling to get, basic social welfare schemes available to them. They move states and they lose access. We do have schemes, but it is not easily implemented. Now imagine someone who loses all their papers. Probably they don't have that much of legal understanding of their laws and rights. They are probably further invisibilized in the whole system of things.
mobility, migration, whether by choice or by compulsion, whether forced or voluntary, is a way of life. And for that, we have to create the safeguards. We have to create the facilities whereby the quality of life will improve. And when the quality of life improves, the productivity of labor will go up, and that productivity will pay for itself in terms of having a higher per capita income, a higher gross domestic product. It's not charity. It's in self-interest that we need to do this.
These were snippets from our 4 independent video stories. Find all the stories linked in the description in the video. And don't forget to subscribe to Newsreel Asia's YouTube channel for more people-centric stories reported from the ground.